Good afternoon, welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I came across a commentary that Hollywood is renewing an interest in making more adaptations for romance novels and romance stories. The market apparently is demanding it. And so I really wanted to comment on it. Hollywood's current obsession with translating these best-selling romance fiction novels into film and streaming content, I think, is an indicator of a deep cultural desire. For a long time now, we've seen how love has been completely reduced to nothing but emotions. Hollywood studios are desperate for dependable audiences and profitable tentpoles. They've made every experimentation in the book, and everything has exploded in their faces. So now they're going back to a formula that's bankable because it's tried and true. These novels that clamor for intimacy, passion, emotional fulfillment. News outlets, of course, are cheering this. It's a renaissance of love stories. Entertainment is going to show love once again, as if this is a business calculation that's wrapped in flowers. The problem is that this kind of romantic adaptation surge is going to signal at the end of the day a continued banal, secular, and shallow depiction that's devoid of the genuine frameworks for things like what real love is, and commitment and marital fidelity. Here's the problem. Our culture, this has happened before. Our culture now is going through this surge once again in terms of its art. The ascendancy of these romance adaptations and the content pipelines, all of these are a paradox. Because on the surface, the entertainment industry is trumpeting aesthetic escapism. And it's delivering to us, these curated fantasies of continued seduction without commitment. But you scrape that veneer, and it's a thin veneer at best. Producers and writers are sensing that millions of consumers are interiorly exhausted because alienation, a dystopic mindset, chaotic multiplicity, all of these things have left people raw and hollow. And so readers of romance novels are, if they are avid readers, they've long celebrated a perpetuation of these narratives that last in the long lasting, because they speak to the interior hopes of all human persons as lovers, the private inclination towards things like trust, fidelity, affection, enduring attachment. So yes, these great fictional novels reflect a human impulse that God made us for commitment, for a shared life. And that's infinitely more meaningful than these baseless flings that Hollywood has been throwing at us for decades now. Hollywood's renewed romance focus can be interpreted as a welcome diversification of genres, sure. But we all know that if we were to take a good look at it, we can understand that corporations are only looking at the bottom line. What's really lacking in the culture and what's signaling the demand is the hunger for interpersonal connection and, frankly, a passionate love that is actually willing the good of the other over the self. Audiences apparently, according to analysts, have been gravitating away from blockbuster spectacles. There's fatigue over franchises. The superhero genre is probably milked out by now. But these themes of courtship, of virtue, of chivalry, of chemistry, and you know what? Sure, to some degree, even the emotional rhythm of coupling. All of those things speak to a perennial yearning that once the spectacle is stripped away, actually connects with the deepest desires of the human person. But when you have an entire entertainment industry that's bombarded us with relentless, hyperactive visual language, like I mentioned, the superhero epics or gruesome speculative universes, well, it's no wonder that people are begging for an interior reprieve. And so the industry commentators are asserting that, yeah, sure, we'll go down this path. The emotional narratives at the heart of these adaptations are going to provide a counterweight, and so we'll sell well. But my hope is that perhaps this might signal a reversal of the industry towards those things that we take for granted. That hopefully Hollywood's notion of romance will move from the transactional into the transcendental, from the superficial to perhaps, if it's not too much to ask, the supernatural. In other words, I'm hoping that a return to classical modes of the pursuit of man and woman as a reflection of a perennial love, my hope is that that can save the entertainment industry by reinstilling a sense of a moral compass. Because it really is remarkable upon reflection that the very generation that is demanding more and more romance adaptations is the same generation that's failed to sustain stable marriages at scale. And I'm talking about at historical scale. Demographic analysts report decline in marriage rates, delays in lifelong partnering. In fact, the studies, we've all known this to be true, but the studies have proven that cohabitating partners simply delay concepts of engagement and marriage and sometimes never even get to that point because the back door is always open. You enter the relationship with the notion of it ending in mind. And so what does that what does that cause? Well, it doesn't solve the problem. It results in increases in serial cohabitation without a sense of lasting commitment for generations now. Marriage was the bedrock institution of our natural society, especially here in the United States. It was an institution undergirded by a plethora of community structures. We had shared rituals, and of course, it is defined by real economic cooperation and social accountability. Yes, your neighbors, your family, they held you to account to be a good spouse. Failing to be that would earn you the social title of scoundrel. But today, those anchors have eroded, if they exist at all. Families are fracturing early and often. It's heartbreaking that my bride and I, we journey with a lot of young couples who prepare for marriage, and we've already known a handful, most who did not journey with us actually. We've already known a handful of our peers who have entered into marriages and seen them end within 1 to 5 years. We've also seen, and the studies are proving this, individualistic self-fulfillment becoming a marker of how the marriage conducts itself. And it eclipses what God plans for marriage and the family, covenanted permanence. If you have that as the sociological context, individualistic self-fulfillment, well then, Hollywood's recycling of romantic novels is not going to be a celebration of real love. It's going to be a period of cultural sedation only to return to bombarding us with hyperactive stimulation all over again. But I believe this is an indicator that as a culture, we are thin within and we are longing for depth. So audiences today are steeped in concepts of emotional volatility. And what do we have as a result? Unmet relational yearnings. And yes, we crave good fiction. We crave good stories that, at least at the vicarious level, can supply for us a concept of connection and closure. Good books can do that. So as Hollywood's producers respond with these glossy adaptations that show us courtship and desire, my hope is that they also root them in durable, perpetuated commitments. Because that's what the heart longs for. We want that kind of a resolution. If we don't, then all you're going to get is a kind of spiritual mirage. It's going to be a simulacrum of relational flourishing, but when it doesn't have the soil of community and perpetuated commitment and sacrificial love, well then all that's being offered is an idealized veneer that when you scrape is hollow and empty, and people will leave hungrier than before. Because the problem is most of these adaptations, if left to the minds of present-day Hollywood producers, they rely on formulaic beats. A protagonist stumbles upon serendipitous encounters, meet-cutes they call them. They accumulate a series of misunderstandings that results into your typical rom-com. The dramatic stakes are heightened, and then there's passionate embrace. But then what? Well, as quickly as they got with each other, they implode. That's why that genre cannot last. But really, as I mentioned, it indicates a broader cultural shift. All the institutions that once mediated love, family, society, church, neighborhood, educational communities, all of these, they simply don't exist anymore. Or if they do, they don't have the same influence. And in their absence, we as individuals now must fill that gap. We quite literally cannot depend on those structures to help us have strong marriages and strong families. We have to rise up within our families. Parents have to rise up. And we have to build for ourselves neighborhoods that are not confined by geographic region. We have to build for ourselves those Catholic communities that share a covenantal worldview. Because if we don't, All we are doing is entering into that same aestheticized romance that's devoid of the real work of labor and virtue that results in the real happiness that we're made for, which is the possession of the perfect good in Christ in our marriage and family, which is really my personal daily prayer. Our secular society, by means of what these analysts are showing, they're hungry for real love, not just surface level romance. And so if any Hollywood producer or story writer is listening to this right now, please take this as an exhortation. Rather than giving us these pursue narratives that are all about desire and culminating in explosive consummation but no commitment, rather than giving us that, give us the kind of love that sacrifices, the kind of love that fights to survive, the kind of love that wills the good of the other over the self, the kind of love that wakes up every day and chooses the other, the kind of love that isn't about me and myself and my expressive individualism, but instead, it's the kind that will last, because I trust that the other is doing the same for me. Give us the kind of durable love that Christ talks about in his scriptures, that the entirety of the scriptures have told us about, that the theology of the body speaks of. Give us the kind of love that's grounded in commitment and vows before God and man. Give us the kind of love that is not just about compensating for what's lacking in the world. Give us the kind of love that screams covenant. I can almost guarantee you, if all of our entertainment were to do that, quoting Father Donald Keefe, if all Catholics lived out the grace of the sacrament of matrimony in one generation, the entire world would be completely transformed. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.